Welcome back, everybody, to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by Support Now. I am very excited about our episode today. It is a difficult topic that we're talking about, and one that I think so many of you will connect with. And the really beautiful thing about our guest today is she's really turned her hardship into something very meaningful for others. And so I'm excited to just have her share more of her story to hopefully inspire others of you that might be on this journey or supporting someone on this journey. So with that, I'd like to introduce Sam Brinson to the podcast. Hey, Sam.
Hey, Jordan. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So Sam, in addition to being a mom, she's also the founder of Hugs for Harrison, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But Sam, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your story and kind of what brought us together to give people a little bit more context before I ask you some questions.
Yeah, sure. So as Jordan said, I'm a mom to both kids on earth and in heaven. I was an elementary teacher for 11 years, and we had our firstborn child, Kate. Everything was easy pregnancy. We decided we want to get pregnant, got pregnant. Everything was just simple. Had her at 39 weeks, healthy baby girl. Her name is Kate. And then, we decided, well, it's time to have another one. So it should be no problem, right? It was so easy the first time. We decided we want to get pregnant. It was a little harder this go around. But eventually, after several months, we got pregnant with a baby boy, and we were so excited. The pregnancy was great for the first trimester, other than morning sickness, which is, for everybody, but they say that's great. That's good news, right? Your hormones are doing the right thing. But then it was a couple days after Christmas, so I was just early into the second trimester, I began to bleed. Several ER trips where we would go, we would check the heartbeat. Harrison was doing great. Never really any answers at first. So they sent us to a perinatologist who then said we had a small little tear in the placenta, but not to worry. This happens a lot. And they just put me on bed rest. And I, told my work as a teacher, I'm not going to be able to come back. I'm going to stay on bed rest, keep the baby healthy. We continued to see high-risk doctors. All the scans are great. Harrison was giant. He was thriving. They weren't worried. But then on January 27th of 2017, I started to feel what felt like contractions. So they did admit me to the hospital at 20 weeks. And after about a day and a half of hit and go, kind of like got the contractions to stop, we ended up seeing the high-risk doctor there who did another scan and told us that my water had broken, and I had no idea because I'd been bleeding so much for so many weeks, and that I probably would deliver Harrison soon. But he still gave us a sliver of hope. He said, he had seen amniotic fluid replenish before, so that's all we needed to hold on to. And we had, the masses come in, laid their hands on my belly, prayed for that to replenish, and that he would be okay and just stay in for a couple more weeks. Northside was telling us 2 more weeks and we can fight for him. And so that's really was our only prayer. And so, we prayed, but then that night, Harrison was born, and he was born alive and perfect and beautiful, but passed away shortly after he was born, in our arms, just a few minutes after he was born, which, then started our grieving journey. We did go on to have another little girl named Hope. And, just kind of learned how to navigate this new life of grieving the loss of our child while also being grateful for the children that we do have here. And then, just learning throughout these 8 years what helped, what didn't help. I connected with you after we decided to start Hugs for Harrison, which I know we haven't gotten into that yet, but just wanting to communicate with and bridge that gap between the griever and the supporter. What that looks like, what people need to help them heal.
So Sam, to go back to the story of Harrison, so how many weeks were you when he came?
20 weeks and 1 day.
Wow. It's unimaginable. As you think back, does it all feel like a haze, or does it feel actually very memorable? I mean, or is it both?
Yeah. It's both. I mean, there are certain moments that stick out, like the actual delivery is very traumatic. And then you see that a lot with child loss or, infant loss when it's during the delivery or shortly after, or a stillbirth. It's something that you've anticipated to be the happiest moment of your life becomes very traumatic because you know the outcome. You know you're going through labor, you're getting the epidural, you've got the nursing staff there, but you know the outcome is so different. And so things like that, the silence in the room, no babies, crying, that sticks out. Leaving the hospital sticks out. I remember sitting at a red light looking at people in the cars next to us right there at the red light at Johnson Ferry. And, people just on their way to work, doing their things. And I just remember thinking they have no idea what my husband and I are driving home with a teddy bear and no baby, that we just delivered a baby and then left him at the hospital. So things like that really are strong there. But then, as far as the days after, really hazy, foggy, blurry.
Did you have any friends or family members that could relate to you? Anyone that had experienced something like that?
I did not. When you're having a baby, I feel like everyone around you is also having babies. And so at the time, it felt like everyone was having successful pregnancies. Women I worked with were still pregnant when I delivered Harrison. So it did feel very lonely and isolating and confusing for sure, especially because it's like one of those things that you don't know until you know, and that ignorance kind of is bliss until you know what can happen.
Well, and it sounds like because Kate in your pregnancy the first time around was just so like you said, it was great. It was normal. It was, relatively quote easy, all things considered. And so you really had something to compare it to, and which in some ways makes it, I think, more challenging because you know what you're supposed to feel. Not that it ever feels any better if it happens first, certainly. And like you had that image, that belief of what was going to happen kind of just ripped away from you.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit more. You mentioned and I think this is I can visualize what you're talking about. It's like you leave the hospital, the world around you is still going. And meanwhile, you're feeling frozen in time in disbelief of what happened and how it could happen. I'm sure so many questions emerged. In those early days and weeks, what did you and your husband need? What was the type of support you were looking for that could give you some meaning, some value, make you feel seen and appreciated again when you were clearly at a very low point?
Yeah, it really is so simple. I tell people this all the time. It was the people who just showed up. So we just needed people to be present in our pain and patient in our pain. So, if we don't answer the text message, keep texting. Or, the people who just showed up at our door and weren't waiting for an invitation, weren't waiting to say the right thing or do the right thing or what do you need. It was the people who just showed up and were there, were less words and more presence and just being there. I'm obsessed with elephants, which is kind of diverting off the topic, but one of the things in our hug, I'm obsessed with elephants. I'm going to tell you why. We have hug baskets that we send to all of our families, and we put an elephant stuffed animal in there, a warmie. They can warm up. But it's because in those early days of grief, I read this story about how in the wild, all of these scientists have researched how mother elephants, after they've lost a baby or, a child elephant, how they notably grieve the loss. And so it talks about there's all these different articles written where they will watch how the mom will stay with the body of their child and find it difficult to leave. They'll just stay there. But that's not what made me obsessed with the elephants. It was the fact that the rest of the herd, which is female really in the elephant world, but they would surround the mom who's with her baby. They would surround her and lay their trunks on her in support, providing this shield. And these scientists documented that those elephants in the herd did not move until the mom moved. And so I tell people, who are going through this now, I get a lot of people asking advice since they know that I've walked it and we've got the nonprofit. They're like, what's the best thing to do? I'm like, you just do that. You're just there with them in solidarity and support, and you're patient. You don't rush them. You don't fix it. You just stay with them until that mom is ready to move, or that dad.
Yeah. Again, you're painting such a beautiful visual. And again, I think what you said is it's so simple. It's so powerful, which is you have to be there and you have to be willing to, I think in our culture, we want to move past the pain so fast. It's very uncomfortable, especially child loss, baby loss. It is incredibly uncomfortable because it's unnatural.
Yeah.
And people want to move past that pain because they can't, that discomfort, and they start to kind of think, how would I process something like this? And as a result, we sometimes, not always, sometimes we do our friends or our family members a disservice because we let our own feelings and discomfort get in the way of really protecting the friend or the family member that we love the most. And so that visual, I think, in that story is really just kind of like a powerful image to consider if you find yourself in a God forbid situation where you're supporting a mom through something like this.
Yeah. I mean, I tell people too that when you're doing it together, when you're walking together in that pain, because it's so easy to get trapped into our own story of loss. And when you step outside of your own story of loss and pain and suffering and into someone else's, even if you don't feel ready because you're dealing with your own stuff, like we all have stuff, we all have grief in so many different ways, so many different aspects of life. But when you step outside of that and you help lift that weight with someone else, alongside someone else, you realize it gets lighter for both of you. That's like really when the healing takes place for you too. When you're helping someone else, you also feel like you begin to heal too. I mean, Rabbi Earl Grolman, I think he's since passed away, but he was an international recognized bereavement counselor. And he just says that grief shared is grief diminished. And it's so true that if we just walk with each other, even though it is inconvenient and it's uncomfortable, it requires you to be patient and it requires you to be okay in those messy, dark places with whoever needs you. You're going to need it too someday. And so when we're walking together in community and lifting that heavy weight of grief together, it really gets lighter. And so the true healing can really start to take place.
You know, it's super well documented, and people say it all the time, that grief never goes away. It's also well documented that grief is not linear. How would you describe where you are in your grief today?
That's a great question. It just depends on the day. You know, I was telling a good girlfriend the other day, so we just had Harrison's 8th birthday in January, and every birthday has looked different. You know, that first birthday was in the hospital delivering our little rainbow Hopi. And then, you know, the second one hit really, really hard. And then there'll be years where I'll try to do something for him. And then there are years where one year we went skiing and I just wanted to get to the top of a mountain to be as close to heaven as I possibly could to be close to him. So it just changes. This year, year 8 hit really hard, especially in the days and weeks leading up to it. I think certain times of year are harder, especially for infant loss, pregnancy or infant loss, because I think even when mentally you feel strong and you're doing okay, your body kind of cycles through these things and anticipates. So, you know, the due date or the birth date, even if you're feeling like, okay, no, this is coming, I'm feeling good, I'm doing all the right things to like deal with this and navigate through it, there's got to be a lot of grace involved too, because our bodies just know. And so it just depends on the day.
Yeah. I think that's important. It's like even 8 years out, your days could look different. Your days can be filled with sadness, maybe still a little bit of anger, or, you know, the what if, like, what if he was here? What would it be like? What would our life be like? And some days I'm sure you're just filled with gratitude for Kate and for Hope and for the life that you have. And I'm sure on multiple days, it's all of those things at the same time. And I think what you shared is the most important thing you said, and what you just shared was that it's still there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's still there. And I think people being more willing to share about that is so important. And it also shines a light on something that, you know, gets talked a lot about on social media and just in regular day-to-day life, which is that you never really know what someone's going through. You know, so for you, in the days and weeks leading up to his birth, you know, you might not be the version of Sam that people know to love and adore. And it's just another reminder that you can't see it all, you can't judge, because you just don't know.
No, that's right. And a lot of times too, as years go on, the grief gets a little sneakier. So it's still there, but it kind of wears different hats, like anxiety or being really short-tempered. And so, you know, the people that are closest to you that have walked with you in it can then point that out. Brian sometimes will be like, I think you need to go visit Harrison today because I'm snapping at everybody in the house. And it might
Yeah.
be like the week before his birthday. And I'm not even associating it. I'm thinking, it's just I'm just grumpy, but he can see, but he's walked it. It's
Yeah.
his story too. And so I think it's important to have those people in your life too that can be like, I think there's that grief underneath whatever, action might be coming out that day that's not so pretty.
Before we talk about Hugs for Harrison, I want to ask a question. This might be pushing it. So if you don't want to respond to it, you don't have to.
Okay.
But maybe this is more for your husband, so it may not be a fair question to ask. You had this son that I'm sure you were very excited about after having a daughter and now having another. Like, how hard is it to grieve just that reality of not having the boy? I mean,
oh my gosh.
I feel like that's the question that a lot of people have, because the reality is that people do care about girls and boys and wanting and experiencing both. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people do. And so I would love, if you're comfortable answering that question, I'd love to just hear you talk about that a little bit.
So hard. It is so hard. That was one of the hardest things, I think, in the beginning too, initially, especially for Brian, having his girl first. And Brian, you can't get more like dude than him. Like, he's super athlete, like very mega guy. And he was so excited to have a son and to do all the things. And you start visualizing coaching his baseball game and doing all of that. Even for me, I still have that sting. Every year it's a Halloween in our community. Every year there's a little like dance, mommy, son, date night. They get to do these partner costumes. And every year around that time, I have to like get off social media because I can't, it kills me. Or, little things like that where the gender specific, it does sting a little bit. And I remember when we found out about Hope, we're so grateful. We were so excited to find out we're going to have another baby. I mean, we didn't think, thought we were going to have to do IVF. She ended up being this like spontaneous miracle that we even got pregnant with her after Harrison. But we found out she was a girl. And I remember Brian having to process through that and it being real and okay that there's like that little bit. It's not disappointed in who she is or that she's a girl and then we get another beautiful daughter. It was just everything to do with the grief of what was lost and wanting both, wanting all three of them here,
Totally. Again, I think it's such a healthy thing to like label that and say it because that's and it's normal. Like for him, like most men want a boy. Like it's not this wild thing to say. It doesn't, and again, it doesn't mean that they don't love their daughters. It doesn't mean they're not amazing dads. Yeah. It's quite the opposite. They are.
Yep.
And like so many of it, like I love that. It's like both can be true at the same time. And, I think you sharing kind of the story of like, mother-son dances and things like that. And that even now, taking a break from social media is healthy. And I think that's a good reminder for any mom, regardless of whether or not you've experienced loss, because it is easy to get caught up in all the things that you don't have, a variety of different angles. To end on a more positive note, though, I would love for you to share more about kind of what led you, what really motivated you behind saying, okay, I'm going to turn my grief into a gift for other people, and just share more about Hugs for Harrison and what you all provide for the community.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I love talking about Hugs for Harrison. It's my greatest honor. I love it so much. So like I said, I taught elementary school for 11 years. And then after Harrison passed away, I became a stay-at-home mom and was so happy in that job. That was just like everything I'd wanted. I had my 2 little girls and I was home and did that for a few years. And then I just felt this stirring in my heart. I felt God saying, there's something else for you. You're not going to go back to teaching. I mean, think in my perfect plan in my world, I was going to go back as just like a parapro or something and, get on benefits and still be available to my children and just be mom. But he just was so clear that it's not going to be teaching. It's not going to be an education. There's something else. And throughout those years since losing Harrison, several women just came into my life with pregnancy loss, infant loss. And I would walk with them individually, pray with them, encourage them, just be a part of it. And I realized, walking with this one friend in particular, I call her the ministry before the ministry, my friend Lindsay, she was a coworker of mine. She had a miscarriage and walked and prayed with her through that loss and then several other losses, and then got to kind of come full circle where she had a successful IVF pregnancy and her little miracle baby. And I was the first person she told, and got to go to the hospital and hold this baby. And I think I got to see this full circle moment of when you walk with someone in really hard places, you get a front row seat to watching the beauty that God creates in their life. Like, you get to be a part of all of that. And so several women would come in and out with their stories, and we'd walk together. And then that just kind of shaped it. Always share them with Brian. And that just kind of all came to a head in 2022. Brian and I were just talking. We're like, we think we need to launch a nonprofit that walks with families suffering this loss. Like, we feel like we've got a really good handle on how we can help them. And so I went to Harrison's gravesite and just sat with him. And I was like, all right, buddy, what does this look like? I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't have this skill set. Like, what's happening? And I felt the Lord whisper to me, 2 Corinthians 1:4, that, God of all comforts comforts us in our trouble so that we would go and comfort others with the same comforts he has given us. And so that part really got to me, that God had comforted us. He had brought us so far. We had learned how to live in this both and place of joy and suffering and walking this path of infant loss. And so we just went for it. We decided to go ahead and launch Hugs for Harrison in 2022. We quickly obtained our 501c3 status in early 2023. And it's just taken off. And our mission is to provide ongoing comfort and support to families after the loss of a baby, to help them grieve well so they'll find hope and healing with Jesus. And so we give every family a hug basket, which these are not your everyday care package. These things are amazing. It's a huge basket just filled with vetted faith-based resources. So tons of books in there, and it's catered to, types of loss, or married, or if you're not married, or if you have children at home that are suffering and grieving. We've got children's resources in there, a $100 gift card for a meal, a free memorial print. There's custom artwork. There's all kinds of just amazing things in there. And it's like our hug, right? So they can go anywhere in the country. That's kind of our first initial, you're not alone, kind of hug from us to them. And then what we also do is fully fund 12 grief therapy sessions with the best of the best grief counselors that's out there. It was very important to us to find somebody who is top of the line in bereavement. And so she's got her degree in thanatology, and she's just incredible. And so we've contracted with her, and we cover the cost for 12 sessions. So every family that wants to, and everybody engages differently. So, it's not pressured. If for therapy to work, you have to want to go. So, but if that's wanted and desired, we encourage it. And then we just set that up. So we take out the legwork of finding someone who's reputable. That's hard enough, right? So we found someone, and we just connect them, and then we pay for it. So it's beautiful. And I have lots of events and different things that we do just to bring the community together, both the lost families and the friends and family that are trying to support them as well.
I love it. And one of the things that you said that stood out to me is so that you can grieve well. And when you said that, I kind of smiled, because I could see someone hearing that from the outside saying, how could you possibly grieve well?
Yeah.
And the reality is you're going to grieve regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And you have an opportunity to in some ways shape how you control that grief and how you take care of yourself and allow others to support you on that journey, which will dictate whether or not you grieve well, or if your grief really can be so all encompassing where you struggle. And that does happen so often. And so I think I just, when you said that, I smiled, because like, grieve well, it sounds like an oxymoron, but it's actually I think it's a very impactful way of articulating what the services and the care package that you provide is really all about. And I love that.
Yeah. We have an opportunity. We have a choice in our grief to participate in it, and to go through it, and to participate, and to do the work. It's hard. It's much easier to go under a rock and to numb and to avoid, but the grief isn't going to go anywhere. It's going to be there with you. And so we just have this opportunity and this choice to make if we want to participate, and to grieve well is kind of our little phrase to just, we can do this. We're going to look at this with a different lens, and we're in it together.
I love it, Sam. Thank you so much. For anyone that wants to learn more about Hugs for Harrison, do you mind sharing the website or social handles so they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's www.hugsforharrison.com, and it's the number 4. So you can look us up there, see more about what we do. You can contact us if you know someone who's lost a baby or if you've lost a baby. So it's really simple to get connected and to get plugged in. And then we have an Instagram page, which is at hugs4_Harrison. We'd love to have you in our family.
Thank you, Sam. And just as a quick kind of wrap up for today's session, Sam and I connected over the shared vision of supporting families through these really difficult moments. And so we've already struck a really beautiful relationship and partnership with families, trying to help them with their community support, whether that's through fundraising, meals, lending a hand, prayer, updates, and more. And so, it is a great honor to be able to kind of serve families alongside of you. Thank you. And, we hope to continue to work together in the future towards helping all families grieve well and really trying to elevate how all supporters come alongside families during these very traumatic moments. So I want to thank you, Sam, for joining us today, sharing more about your story. I know it probably never gets easier to talk about it, and it's a really impactful story to be shared. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the work you do. I appreciate it.